welcome back to another episode of the Daily Flip podcast. I'm your host, Alex. Today we're going to be talking about the deficit, the budget. Is it possible to actually get it to be balanced? And is Doge actually the way to go about it? And, of course, we will end today with our Daily Delight, a story meant to leave you feeling positive, ready to take on the day. If that's enough rambling for me, let's jump in to our daily debate. So, number one, we'll just make it one question overall. If there is one program that you know you have to keep from the government, and it can be any amount of money, what is it going to be? I think a default answer for a large majority of people would be Social Security, because they've already been putting money into it. They feel like they have earned something by constantly having that money taken away from them and working and having to deal with the payroll tax. Maybe some people say Medicare, Medicaid. I want to know what your opinion is. If you're a person who is not actually using any of those systems, maybe it's another funding program that you really enjoy. Put it down there in the comment section, because everybody's going to have one. And when I say that, everybody's going to have one, but across the entire nation, not just the people listening to this, everybody's going to have a program that they want to save. And if we listen to everybody, then the budget may not actually change at all. We may not be able to cut a whole lot of fat from it. But hey, that's what Doge is for. And that's what this article today that we're talking about from the Dispatch is actually going into, talking about how Doge, while it has the appearance of trying to cut the fat and the blubber, is it actually going to be able to do that much without being able to tackle the core spending? And we've talked about this before. I've also talked about how this is not actually a conservative movement under Donald Trump now, and he has shifted the party to the left, if not towards the center. But guess what? From where they are to the left is, from where they are to the center is to the left. So they have obviously shifted. They're not willing to talk about, or at least he is not willing to talk about, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and most Republicans, they like to leave it on the table. Most conservatives don't want to deal with that issue. They just say, oh, we're going to do some sort of reform, and then they never really get around to it because they know that if they take away the benefits of their people, then there will, and by their people, I mean their constituents, then there will be heck to pay for it. They're probably not going to stay in office. Or there's the other possibility, which is there are some people that are willing to take on that challenge and get elected expressly with that in mind. That's normally in places that have younger populations. And yet they're not actually able to get those sort of reforms passed because the machine / the other people that are in the way are not going to do that because it is political suicide for all of them. In order to actually peel back some of these large spending programs, because mind you, these are the most spending that we have. This is mandatory spending. It's not discretionary spending. And this article comes with a very helpful graph that they actually took from the budget chart book, which is a yearly release that comes from the Manhattan Institute. And I just want to break down one of the graphs that they provided here because it shows how much mandatory spending is nowadays and how just cutting around it, going to all these different programs, all this different USAID money that's going out. It may be great that we're cutting those programs, that you're trying to save money there, but you're not going to be able to touch the real thing that is causing our budget to not be balanced. And this is obviously what Elon and Trump say that we're going to do. Obviously, there's some back and forth. They understand that they're trying to cut here. They had a really ambitious goal of 2 trillion. Now that's 1 trillion. But the point being, when Donald Trump makes claims of being able to reach a balanced budget, unless he's willing to break one of his campaign promises on this one specifically, going out and telling his people, actually, we are going to touch your Social Security, we are going to touch your Medicare or your Medicaid, then he's not getting there anytime soon, because the chart very well describes. So let's start with a baseline. In 1965, how much of the federal budget was mandatory spending, how much of it was defense, and how much was it domestic discriminatory? Discretionary. The percentage for mandatory, 34%. For defense, 43%. And for domestic discretionary, that is 23%. Oh, that seems not that crazy, right? Not the end of the world. Well, if we go to 2024, how much is mandatory? I'll tell you what the other ones are first. Defense is 13. Domestic discretionary is 14. And remember, there are only 3 options on this chart, making mandatory spending 73% of the yearly budget within the United States in 2024. That is absolutely insane. And then, if you want to actually look at the different entitlements and the interest that we have to pay on any sort of debt we've taken out in order to sponsor slash allow these entitlements to continue on, let's look at this here. So, Social Security, you're looking at 849 billion. For our Medicare, 666 billion, Medicaid about 3 billion, income security is about 381 billion. Other programs is another 366 billion. Non-defense discretionary, so now we're breaking into a different category here, 763, and defense itself is 894 billion. I mean, that at the end of the day is a lot of money. Why? Why do we have to actually say to ourselves, we have to keep this spending? Why is it labeled mandatory? Well, there's a few reasons, and one of them is particularly, I would say, political in nature. Because once you give something to a population, once you give something to a people, it is very hard politically to take it away. And it's called mandatory spending in a practical sense because these are the things that we have promised our people. These are the guarantees, these are the entitlements that we say you get as a United States citizen born after said date. So we have to pay those off along with the mandatory spending of the interest on our debt. Then again, we just actually take out more debt in order to pay it off. So is it really mandatory? Yes, it is because we owe it. But at the same time, we're just continuing to inflate the bubble as we do so. So why is Doge not going to be able to actually tackle this issue? It's very, very complicated. And what I mean by that is the conversation around it is extremely, extremely convoluted because people believe that Doge is going to be able to actually bring all these different reforms that will balance the budget, at least to some degree. Doge itself likes to tout the fact that it's cutting money here, cutting money there, and that it has the possibility of actually getting us to an even budget. But if anybody in that White House is being realistic, we're not going to get there. And making claims that we are is not going to be useful at all. It's going to mislead people. It's going to make them believe that we can actually deal with our debt issues. We can deal with our spending problems without addressing Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, the core fundamental spending that is in the budget no matter what. It is not discretionary spending that has sunsets on it, that some random person has earmarked in their bill. No, these are spending items that have been passed through law, that are recurring, that don't necessarily have a sunset date. So I want to actually read you the quote that comes from our friends here at the Dispatch, and it is describing what the false idea that is being provided out there in the conservative world. On February 7th, President Donald Trump posted a short and enthusiastic message on his Truth Social account, quote, "Balanced budget, DJT." After the right-wing provocateur Charlie Kirk tweeted, quote, "The Dems are going to lose their mind." Musk weighed in with confidence and then said, quote, "Balanced budget is going to happen." Sorry, Elon, it's not going to happen. Maybe you want it to happen. Maybe that's fair enough. Maybe he wants it to happen and he's willing to take on the burden of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and actually ripping those programs out from their roots. Maybe he's willing to because he doesn't necessarily have to deal with the political repercussions. They don't directly affect him either. He's a person that, if everything continues to go his way, which it won't, and which you cannot guarantee, then he doesn't need Social Security. He may not need Medicare or Medicaid whatsoever, so he can make those bold claims. But remember, Donald Trump is going to have to deal with the consequences, and it's not going to be that simple, especially when he promised his people on the campaign trail, which this is the one thing, the first time around and the second time around that, well, let's say the second time around, he actually pulled all the Republicans along with him this time. But it is the thing that distinguished him from a normal Republican. Is that's probably one reason. There are a few other things, tactile language, the tactics he used, the language, and also some other policy. But the main one was he never brought any sort of Social Security reform onto the table. And I don't think that Elon will be able to convince him to move on this one. Then again, it is his second term. Maybe he's willing. Maybe he's going to say this is actually better for the U.S. long term. And he's going to make an argument like that. We're trying to make America great again. We're trying to get rid of the entitlement programs that possibly facilitate people being able to relax. And what I mean by that is to be able to switch off and not actually push to be their best and not be able to take agency in their life because things are just happening for them. I don't know. I really don't know what justification Donald Trump could come up with for it besides the one saying this is going to make America great again. This is to make sure that all of our people have the opportunity to save money on all of their paychecks. They can spend their money how they want. They can live how they want. I could see him saying those arguments, but the fundamental core of it, I wonder how he would have to be convinced that it is a good idea. So, Elon, you got a tall task if you're actually trying to balance the budget properly, and if you're trying to get rid of these things. Donald Trump is going to be a big question mark on those sort of issues. So, with that, let's actually go into our daily delight. This one's going to make you feel like you have a smile on your face. That makes literally no sense, Alice. You're stupid. It's going to leave you feeling very, very good. This article comes from Animals Around the Globe. Quote, a mysterious foster cat was hiding a big secret, end quote. And yes, this little girl, actually, yeah, it's a girl cat, and she was getting a little bit aggressive. What do you think the answer is? She was pregnant, and then they start talking about the process of keeping her comfy in the house, of protecting her. There's photos that are also involved of her and the kittens. If you want to see any of them, you want to hear this story, you want to leave with a smile on your face, this article, along with the other article, if you want to read that one as well, but this one specifically that will leave that smile glowing as you go into work. It is found in the description below that like and subscribe button. Also down there, you can find the podcast on Spotify, Pocket Cast, Podvine, as well as the Twitter handle at Your Daily Flip, where I post the links to these episodes, the Monday, Wednesday, Friday show about U.S. politics, and the 6 and 6 links, which is our international news segment. It's 6 stories from around the world in 6 minutes or less. So, with all that said, there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe, don't die.